Welcome back to Forum Focus. I'm Wyatt Sharp. I'm joined now by Jackson Gosnell, of course, who's been co-hosting what I think is fair to say a pretty special episode of the show here. And also joining us is Stefan Mihailu, who has advised basically, is it fair to say just everyone in Republican politics? I mean, a lot of people.
It's been a blessing to work at the national level on a presidential and helping like-minded Republicans be elected to office.
For sure. And I think you're working with Elise Stefanik now as well, the GOP conference chair.
That's right.
Yeah.
She is arguably one of the most powerful women in Washington and in the world, and it is an honor and privilege to be on her political staff.
For sure. Yeah, very important distinction for sure. Don't want to get the two confused. I'll start it with you. We certainly saw, I mean, you've, as I said, advised a number of different Republicans, whether it be Vivek Ramaswamy, whether it be Elise Stefanik, working with Trump as well in a number of different capacities. If you look to kind of how things have progressed, ever since January 20th, you were at the inauguration yourself as well. How would you rank kind of the overall success of the administration? And then more specifically, we're starting to see on issues like Epstein, issues like Israel, some Republicans starting to break ranks with Donald Trump. How should the president kind of deal with some of these fractures that he's seeing?
From my perspective, on a scale of 1 to 10, the Trump presidency so far, I would say it's 120. I mean, the border has been secure. Promises made, promises kept. President Trump said he would secure the border, protect Americans. He did exactly that. He had said that tariffs would turn around the economy and tax cuts would turn around the economy. And it worked. Lo and behold, a lot of the so-called mainstream media and these economists were dead wrong.
Yeah.
So I think the American people are safe. They're secure. There's more money in their pockets. The one big, beautiful bill is a huge success and a huge win for the American people. It's going to put more guards on the border, some of the biggest tax cuts in history. Businesses are thriving. People are thriving. And those other issues that you talked about, sure, we read about them in the media and see them on social media. I just don't think average Americans care. They want to make sure they're safe, they're protected, and there's more money in their pockets. And Donald Trump is delivering on that.
And what about, I mean, because obviously you also work with Vivek Ramaswamy, who was very involved in the administration. He's now running for governor of Ohio. And I mean, I don't want to look too far into the future necessarily, but certainly the conversation around the midterms and then even beyond that into the presidential election in 2028 is there as well. How should the Republicans kind of go beyond this age of Trumpism? I mean, maybe it's still embracing Trumpism without Donald Trump being the person behind it, given this will be his last term.
Well, I think it's a great problem that Republicans have that the bench is so deep. And obviously at the top of that ticket is going to be J.D. Vance, the vice president. But you've got folks like Vivek Ramaswamy. Even there was a poll and study that showed Elise Stefanik was on the list of people for 2028. So Republicans have a very deep bench when it comes to someone who can run for president. I'm even hearing RFK might be tossing his hat in the ring, Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
It is a good problem to have so many good, like-minded conservatives who could step up and run for president of the United States. And on the other side of the aisle in 2028, we've got Bernie Sanders and AOC. I'll take that any day of the week.
Exactly. I'll come to you in a second. But Stefan, because we have a lot of conversation too, going back to the last election, going back to 2016, where people are saying how the reason why Kamala Harris didn't win, the reason why Hillary Clinton didn't win is solely because they're a woman, right? I mean, that was, the rhetoric that was coming, at least from Democrats. But a lot of people too, even Democrats themselves, I was listening to Pod Save America the other day with the former Obama speechwriters who are, of course, very Democrat, and they were admitting, they said, no, that's not why. It's because Democrats have just failed in delivering their message when, they had a woman candidate because they focused on the wrong things. Do you think that, it's possible, I mean, you mentioned Elise Stefanik, that maybe the first female president might actually be a Republican?
It's possible and very well could be. I mean, look at the Democratic Party now. My mom, God bless her soul, was a Kennedy Democrat. She was pro-life, conservative, pro-labor. She would not be welcome in today's Democratic Party. Look no further than New York City. Kami Mamdani is about to become the mayor of New York City. Government-run grocery stores, defund the police, wide open borders. And then you look at Kathy Hochul. Her very first executive order, the first thing she did when she took office as governor is basically naming and solidifying and cementing New York State as a sanctuary state. That's why you're hearing a name like Elise Stefanik as a potential gubernatorial candidate, because the Democratic Party has gone so far radical and extreme. That is the reason why Republicans win, and they're going to win across New York State in 2026, and I think they're going to win in 2028.
And Jackson, maybe I'll pick up on what Stefan was saying about Elise Stefanik possibly running for governor even as well. There's a lot of conversation, I think, with respect to whenever a candidate, whether it be Democrat or Republican, tries to run in a race where the opposing party is kind of the dominant party in that state. Right, New York is obviously heavily Democrat, at least in recent elections. For Gen Z, our generation as well, when they're looking into the political process and they're seeing how it's kind of a binary system where it's either one party or the other who is successful in elections, does that turn them away from wanting to be engaged and involved in, politics when it seemingly is just one way or the other?
Absolutely not. I think it makes them all the more passionate about it because they're trying to break those molds. And I think we saw that in the last election. A lot of young people turned out for Donald Trump. A lot of young people probably turned out for leftist candidates as well. But I think young people are getting involved. They want to break this mold of this two-party thing. I'm not saying that's me. I quite enjoy having the two parties as it stands now. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was a pivotal independent candidate who now has a role in the Trump administration. I think that's largely because he had so much support. The president recognized that support. He agreed with many of his ideas, maybe not everything, but he thought he would be a good person to add to the team. He did that, and now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is delivering big wins for the American people with his Maha movement.
Right. But I mean, that's what I'm getting at because you mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right? And I mean, he's an example of someone who's been able to unite behind one of the two binary parties. But when I interviewed RFK, this was something that we talked about because young people don't necessarily want to be put into like echo chambers of just one party or the other, right? They want to be able to have their own opinions without having to be loyal solely to one side. And so my question is that something that is able to happen in today's political climate, whether
Sure.
it's coming from the left or the right?
I would say absolutely. And just for the reason that I outlined for you, perhaps I should have been more clear in my answer, but I think that people are getting away from the two-party thing, and I think it is something that can work. It's something that's being played out right now across the country, and people are getting wins on the things they care about. I'll just talk about this RFK example a bit more. People want the economy to do good. You're getting that with Trump, but they also want their food to be healthy and not full of chemicals. And they're getting that too under RFK.
And so, Stefan, how much of the issues that we're seeing, because Gen Z obviously has the issues that are important to them, but also, like, Jackson mentioned the Maha movement, for example. I think that's something that every American is willing to embrace. I talked to Jillian Michaels as well, someone who's really been kind of leading the charge on that movement. And, it's an example, I think, of how the Trump administration is recruiting various voices who perhaps, like, if you had have asked me 10 years ago, is Jillian Michaels going to be a strong MAGA Trump supporter, right? I would have said absolutely not. But like, why is that? Why is it that the Trump message is seemingly resonating with people who just you would not expect it to?
Because they're focusing on issues that people actually care about. Again, you go to these radical progressives in the Democratic Party, and what are they talking about? Social justice, defund the police, wide open borders. No one in their right minds want any of that. We have 3 young kids at home, and my wife, former social worker, stay-at-home mom, she's obsessed with making sure that our meals that we're serving our kids are healthy. So she's
Mhm.
big on the whole red dye issue and making sure that there's no chemicals in our kids' food. So I think it's just smart populism that they're focusing on issues that families actually care about and not something that's going to get clicks on social media like a defund the police or a wide open border philosophy. They're focusing on things that people care about and that impact people's lives, and they're doing something to make a difference in those lives.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're looking to the midterms even as well, because if we see right now, it's obviously very close. Some people are looking at the polls and Republicans are far ahead. Some polls show that the Democrats are ahead. But I think one thing that the Democrats are likely to struggle with is, and I think you pointed it out earlier, is that there really just isn't a leader of the Democratic movement right now in the same way that Trump is kind of the leader of the Republican movement. The leading polls for the Democratic nomination right now are showing it's Kamala Harris or it's AOC, people who I don't think would have a very high chance at being successful. How do Republicans capitalize, though, on the success and on the momentum that they're seeing right now and not allow kind of what happened in Canada? And just to explain, like we had the leader of the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, who was ahead by 20 plus points in the polls. Everyone said he was going to be prime minister. And then election night came and he lost.
2 things are going to happen. You're going to see in the months and even short-term years ahead that the benefits of the one big beautiful bill are going to come to fruition. Those tax cuts, people are going to see a lot more money in their pockets. Businesses are going to have a lot more money in their pockets. And mark my words, the turning point is going to be November this year when Kami Mamdani, he will win the race for New York City mayor. He is going to be the face of the Democratic Party in 2026. Kami Mamdani, New York City, he's going to win that race. And every single Republican across the country, it is political malpractice if they don't link every single candidate to Kami Mamdani.
Yeah, and is the reasoning for that, Zohran Mamdani, like what you're talking about there, is it a kind of a fear that the kind of rhetoric that he's embracing in New York City could become the norm for the Democratic Party and embraced by the who's who of Democratic politicians?
Well, it is the norm in the Democratic Party. Whether it's Bernie Sanders, AOC, or now Kami Mamdani, they are the party of wide open borders, defund the police, letting crime run
Yeah.
rampant. That is the mantra of the Democratic Party.
Well, and I would just add really quickly that if we're going to be going up against somebody like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, sign us up for that on the Republican side, because I think it'll be a big success for us.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much to the both of you. Really appreciate it. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Forum Focus. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week here on Forum Focus.